What's up, everybody, and welcome to The Horror Within Me, a podcast dedicated to the world of horror. I am your host, Eric, and each week I'm going to rate and review a new movie or TV show that falls within the horror genre. Now, this is a show for horror fans, hosted by a horror fan, who's just here to share my opinions and experiences with my fellow horror friends in hopes that you may gain something new to watch or not watch, and really just talk about all things related to this beautifully dark and spooky world that we call horror. So if this sounds like a show for you, stick around, we're going to have a lot of fun. So let's get started. Hey, what's up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of The Horror Within Me, a show where I, Eric, your host, review horror movies. So, welcome, as I said. This week's episode is super fun and exciting, not only because of the movie that we're going to review, but because of what number episode this is in the show. This is episode 50. I can't believe I've hit 50 episodes of The Horror Within Me. It's just season 2 is just going off strong. We're starting off really strong here, and I'm very excited about it. Last week's episode we did God, I can't even remember already. Evil Dead Rise, and it was just a really great episode, and I really am having so much fun with the way that the show is going, and to think about it seems so long that I started it and wanted to, like, the way that it started to where it is, like I mentioned before, to now having episode 50, it seemed appropriate for the horror of the show, the horror podcast, to do this specific movie, not only because I was a fan of the movie, but because I think it's a great love letter to horror fans everywhere. And if you haven't figured it out already, we're going to be doing the 2022 horror cult instinct cult classic, Terrifier 2. You can see I'm wearing my Terrifier shirt if you're watching this on YouTube. Hello, YouTube friends. I have my Terrifier shirt on. We're going to have a great episode. I've got some really good reviews to read with you all, and I think I did a pretty good review myself. So, other than that, before we get started, I did want to touch base on a couple other things going on. Let's see. I think I spoke about Monster Mania, the 20th anniversary coming up in August in Cherry Hill. But other things that I never talk about that I'm also very interested in, and I don't know if any of you are interested in, is like in the community of horror, there's a lot of things, like there are books and video games, but like one of the things that I'm dealing with right now is I'm in a big video game phase. But I didn't finish anything. Like, I'm still trying to beat the Resident Evil 4 remake. I have it on PS5. Just because the time constraints in my life make it very difficult to find time for everything. And then when I do have time to play video games, I'm usually playing with my niece and nephew, and it's usually Dead by Daylight or the Friday the 13th game. But recently, we have been playing something that's called Secret Neighbor. It's so fucking dumb, but also great at the same time. And if you don't know what it is, it's a branch off from another franchise called Hello Neighbor, which I've never heard of or played. But the whole premise of Secret Neighbor is you have a bunch of kids that go to the neighbor's house because the kids are missing. And every match, everyone starts off as a kid, but one of the kids, and instantly as the person, if you're that kid, is the neighbor in disguise. So you have to sneak around with the other kids, and at some point you can change into the neighbor that you've chosen and capture the kid. And it's very family friendly. It's not violent. And the death of the children are they turn into a bunch of missing children posters or whatever. So it's a fun game to play with a bunch of people. It's just my new obsession. I've been playing that. But backpedal a little bit on the Friday the 13th game. Recent news we've seen all over the place is that the creators have not going to have the licensing to the game anymore. So in December 31st of 2023, all of the sales of the game will go away. You will no longer be able to purchase it. And then up until about December 31st, 2024, they're thinking that's when the servers for the game are going to permanently shut down. So what they started doing is they reduced the price online for the game to $4.99. And then recently they just announced that they're going to max everyone's levels out now and give them all of that so they can enjoy the top tier perks of everything for the remainder of the game. Now, fun fact is I was streaming on Twitch a couple weeks ago with my niece and nephew. We were playing the game, and I had someone come into my Twitch chat and was asking about my PlayStation name and like, "Is this your name?" And I was kind of like weird about it. I'm like, yeah, I guess. Like, what is going on?" And they fucking got in my account and maxed my level out, gave me all this stuff, and was like, "Do you like your surprise?" And I was like really creeped out by the whole thing. I went and changed all this stuff because it was super weird. And now the creators are doing it for everybody, and I'm like, couldn't they just like it's just it was a weird coincidence, and it was very strange, and I was like the one time streaming um that made me not want to stream because it made me nervous. Like, I don't know, like, why are people hacking? Like, don't do that to people. Like, let them play, let them stream, let them have fun, because I really enjoy streaming on Twitch. I have a lot of fun playing video games and just meeting people and talking with people, and especially playing with my niece and nephews. I don't take things serious, so I don't want that to like persuade me to like just to not do that. Anyway, moving forward, we're gonna jump into the movie for this week, which is Terrifier 2. I'm super excited about this review because I watched this movie a few months back when I think it was first released back on streaming services. I found it and I rented it, and I knew what I was getting into. I knew it was going to be a really long movie. I didn't have a chance to go see it in the movie theater because I didn't want to go by myself. But now I think I would just start going to the movies by myself. I really just don't care. But anyway, I saw the original Terrifier, the first Terrifier. I've never seen All Hallows Eve, and I've never seen the other little short Terrifier either. But I've seen the first Terrifier movie, and I think it was in 2016 that I saw it. Yeah. Me and my ex had broken up at that point, and I was living on my own. And it was something like, I want to watch a horror movie tonight, and I found it, and I fucking loved it. I thought it was funny. I thought it was scary. I thought it was, just the right amount of what I wanted, and I really, really liked it. So when they announced Terrifier 2, I was instantly intrigued. Um, and I really did want to see it in the movie theater, but I didn't make it. But I'm glad I got to see it anyway. So, what is Terrifier 2? If you have no idea, then I don't know where you've been, but I'm sure you do. But anyway, we're going to jump into all the facts, surrounding Terrifier 2, like who stars in it, the director, all the things we do every week. So, the synopsis for Terrifier 2 on IMDb is this. After being resurrected by a sinister entity, Art the Clown returns to the timid town of Miles County, where he targets a teenage girl and her younger brother on Halloween night. I love that Terrifier is also set on Halloween. I don't think like you can always pick a horror movie and set it on Halloween, and it can be completely different than the movie Halloween in so many different ways. And I think that Terrifier is a great example of that. It just gives that extra oomph in the horror movies of the spooky settings, and there's so much you can do with so many different ways to do Halloween night horror movies in so many different ways. We have Night of the Demons, very different kind of movie than Halloween. Terrifier 2, Terrifier, like setting things on Halloween. I know there's so many more. Trick or Treat, like it's just they're like the best movies. Anyway, Terrifier 2 stars David Howard Thornton as Art the Clown, Lauren Lavera as Sienna, Elliot Fulham as Jonathan, Sarah Voigt as Barbara, Kaylee Hyman as Brooke, Casey Hartnett as Allie, Emily McLean as the Little Pale Girl, and Samantha Scafidi as Victoria Hayes. Now, a lot of this cast was at Monster Mania in Cherry Hill in March, including David Howard Thornton, Damien Leone, Lauren Lavera, and I was so sad because like they were in a separate room than the room that I'm usually in with all the other stars, like where I met Holly Marie Combs and Rose McGowan, and they even were selling David Howard Thornton in costume Art the Clown photo ops, and I was so stupid. I never got one. I never got to meet any of them, and it's one of my biggest regrets. And I just even learned yesterday when I did a Final Girl Friday post on social media that I picked Sienna from Terrifier 2 and that Lauren Lavera is from Philadelphia. So super close, super cool. So I thought that was a fun fact. But it's an instant regret that I didn't get to meet them. I am huge fans, and I would have loved to have had the chance to have gotten an autograph and a picture and all that fun stuff. Maybe they'll come back another time. That'll be super exciting. I'll get to wear my shirt. I'll get to get a picture. I'll get to live my fantasy. So, Terrifier 2 was released on October 6th, 2022. It was directed by Damien Leone, produced by Damien Leone, Phil Falcone, George Stuber, Michael Levy, Stephen Della Sala, and Jason Levy. It was written by Damien Leone, and it is not rated. It has a runtime of 2 hours and 18 minutes. It is considered in the horror genre, shocker. And the tagline is, "Who's laughing now?" So if you didn't know any of that, now you do, and you can't say that you didn't. Damien Leone also, the director Damien Leone just seems like such a great, down to earth kind of guy. I just want to put that out there. I would love to interview him and kind of pick his brain. Maybe I'll try to get it. I don't know. A little show like mine. Maybe he'll get on it. Maybe he won't. I don't know. But I think I might reach out because it just seems like he seems like such a nice guy and it's someone that would be easy to talk to and interview. So we'll see. Let's see. The runtime of 2 hours and 18 minutes really, really kind of shocked me on Terrifier 2. I was like, wow, they probably did if the final cut of the movie was 2 hours and 18 minutes, how long and how much footage do you actually have? How long could the movie actually been? Could you have hit 3 hours and 18 minutes? 3 hours? I'm not saying that I would have wanted that, but I'm like they did so much editing and they were like it's still at 2 hours and 18 minutes. That's pretty impressive in my opinion. So Terrifier 2 on IMDb has an IMDb rating of 6.1 out of 10. And then on Rotten Tomatoes, the Rotten Tomato rating as a tomato meter is 85% and an audience score of 80%, which is the second week in a row that the Rotten Tomatoes tomato meter has a higher percentage rating than the audience score, which is even more of a shock for me with Terrifier 2, with the hype and the cult following that Art the Clown has and the Terrifier community has. I mean, I see more positive, I think, about Terrifier 2 than I do negative, but maybe that's just the algorithm working in my favor, I guess. I don't know. But those are the IMDb facts on the stars and the rating of that and all that fun stuff. So before we move on to the reviews, this is the perfect time to take a little break in our show to get a word from our sponsors. Just kidding. There are none. So then we're going to jump right into this week's terrifying trivia question. So this week's Terrifier trivia question is multiple choice. And I made it up all by myself because that's what I've been trying to do because it keeps my brain happy and healthy. And I like it. If you like it, great. If not, whatever. All right. This week's question is, in the school scene, when Jonathan sees Art and the little pale girl, what animal corpse are they playing with? Is it A, a skunk, B, a rabbit, C, a possum, or D, a dog? Stick around to the end of this episode to find out the answer. All right. I thought that was a fun question. I like the multiple choice. And if you haven't seen the movie, you still get to play along and just do a blind guess. You know what I mean? And if you have seen the movie, yeah, I think it's just kind of do you remember what it was? So anyway, it is time for that point in the show where we get into the reviews. And I had fun, as I always do, picking the reviews this week. So let's jump into it. It's time for the top 3 best reviews on IMDb for Terrifier 2. And coming in first, we have, which is titled, Whip Me Please. And here's the review. Massive Terrifier fan. Terrifier 2 has cemented itself as my new favorite horror film of all time, which hasn't ever changed since the OG A Nightmare on Elm Street, the most cosmic slasher film of all time, released until the third and fourth films respectively. 3 words to describe it: visceral, uncompromising, and nightmarish. Art makes Pennywise look like a Barney. Everything is amped to a trillion. The character development, story, soundtrack, cinematography, movie sets, kills, effects, and the insanely innovative mannerisms by David Howard Thornton. Laura Lavera as Sienna is the most badass and tantalizing final girl, alongside the pantheon roles of Sidney Prescott and Laurie Strode. I loved every second of this almost 2.5 hour film. I know Damien has enough material for a part 3 and 4, but I pray they don't overdo it in the future as much as I'd love to forever witness the carnage of Art the Clown. Not that, no, oops, sorry. Note that I've been waiting for this film since the Indiegogo in 2019. That was a hard review to read. The way that the punctuations had me all fucked up. I need to take a sip of my coffee. Okay, let's start. Where do we start? Starts off, they let us know right away that they're a massive Terrifier fan, which A plus. We want to know that obviously that you're a massive Terrifier fan. I thought it was funny that their favorite film hasn't changed since A Nightmare on Elm Street. I mean, that makes sense because I still like hold on true to the Halloween franchise. Like, I don't pick a favorite film. I think at this point it's just a franchise as a whole. And I have favorite ones within it, and certain times of the year or certain moods, which ones I want to watch. But A Nightmare on Elm Street is a great film, and it's really hard to replace. So kudos to you for actually giving up the title to a classic like that to Terrifier 2. Not saying that it's not a classic. It's just you could have kept it in. I don't know. Let's see. The reason I really like this review was because of the 3 words they use to describe it, which is visceral, uncompromising, and nightmarish. I think that like all you had to do for this review was use those 3 words to say like that you could have just said massive Terrifier fan, 3 words to describe it, visceral, uncompromising, and nightmarish. I think that could have been the review, and you could have gotten people just right away there. Not to say that the rest of the review wasn't, fun. It's just you could have left it at that. I think that was a great way to describe the film, and I probably wouldn't even have been able to describe it as good as that. So kudos to this review. Moving on to the next one, it is titled Gory, Fun, and Epic. See, even those 3 don't hit visceral, uncompromising, and nightmarish. Like gory, fun, and epic just don't have the same oomph as those. So anyway, here's the review. As long as the movie is, it captured my attention the entire time. The kill scenes were phenomenal and shockingly gory. There was one scene in particular involving a dream that I loved. The plot was great and the lead actress was fantastic. And David, of course, was brilliant as Art the Clown. Watching him in this movie was like the first Terrifier on crack. He had no mercy and it was perfectly twisted. I especially loved the little girl clown in this movie. She brought a whole new level of creepy. Every scene was interesting and I loved the various settings. Damien and the whole cast should be so proud. You really outdid yourself. Thank you for keeping horror exciting and giving us what we want to see. I'm going to jump right in and tell you why I love this review. Was for that last 2 sentences. Damien and the whole cast should be so proud. You really outdid yourself. I love when people like really give compliments like that to like the creators and the cast, because at the end of the day, these are people just like me and you who are putting things out to the world, and they're working hard, and there's no entitlement. They're busting their ass to create something for people, and people like it. And I think that we need to give the kudos to, even if it's not great, they did take a chance and they can learn from it. Just don't be super, super mean about it. Anyway, and thank you for keeping horror exciting and giving us what we want to see. I think that's one of the biggest things I loved about Terrifier 2 is that it was such a love letter to the fans, I believe. It just really showed in the way that they made the movie, and how even the 2 hours and 18 minutes of it is like, we really got to keep this in. Like, it was probably hard as hell to edit this movie because they wanted to do so much for the fans, and I think that it really, really shone through. So it's one of the reasons I picked this review. And the last best review is titled Instant Classic, and that alone caught my attention. And now here's a review. Totally blown away by this film. The first one was good, and this one is even better. Must have seen it a dozen times by now. Be warned though, it's not for the faint of heart. Extremely violent, even though it's over the top, it's kinda cartoonish, lol. Laura Lavera steals the show as Sienna. She's such a badass final girl. I hope her career thrives and we see her in many more horror films. She nailed it, as did David Howard Thornton as the sadistic Art the Clown. Moreover, Freddy, Jason, and Jigsaw, I predict Art is going to be the new face of horror. So glad it's killing it at the box office too. This will definitely open up doors for other indie horror films to get made. Horror was in dire need of a good shot in the arm, and Terrifier 2 delivered. I love this review because, again, it's just so nice to hear people like not just saying how much they love the review or how much they love the movie, but like really giving props to like the cast and giving props to like how it's like opening the door for other indie horror films to get made, because those indie films, like this is an indie show, we don't have the budgets and the experiences and all the bells and whistles that everyone who's getting sponsored or getting paid has. So it's really just us with an idea, trying to find other people that are sharing with that idea and passion for the industry and believing in that story that they're trying to tell and giving it their all. And sometimes they hit and sometimes they don't. But I think that it was a true statement that this really opens up the door, because it can happen and it's random. You never know what's going to stick or what's going to hit. Like for example, like this show I do on the side as a hobby to get to talk to people, and it got a few some downloads here and there, but it's nothing compared to what all these other podcasts are, and there are hundreds if not thousands of horror people that are podcasts out there. So to really find one that sticks out is probably very difficult. So the fact that anyone has even found this show and comes back every week, I appreciate and I love it. And some of the times you can listen to other things or watch other shows, and it's very similar, but for some reason it's outperforming in so many other ways. Like you just don't know what's going to get or how it's going to stick. So I think that movies like this really do give that opportunity for other movies to be given a chance, or other shows, or whatever the case is, for the indie content creator community. But that wraps up the end of the best reviews on IMDb, and now we're going to jump right into the top 3 worst reviews of Terrifier 2 on IMDb. Oh God, here we go. Titled, "Seriously, what a waste of time." And the review is, "This was just a gore fest of nothingness. No storyline, just a bunch of shock factors that were ridiculously unrealistic. Also, over 2 hours, my God, if I wanted to suffer this badly, I'd start going back to church on Sundays. I had heard so many things about it, so decided to give it a shot with my friend, but needless to say, he felt the same way. Nothing added up to anything or was explained. I guess we as the audience just are supposed to somehow know and figure out the director's delusional vision. Really wish I would have skipped this one and spent my time watching something actually worthwhile. Just horrible. A gore fest of nothingness. I mean, that also could be a compliment for this. I think so, for people that love gore and not really want something that's too in depth, like a Hereditary storyline. It could be also a compliment. So choose your words wisely, buddy. A bunch of shock factors that were ridiculously unrealistic. Duh, it's a fucking horror movie. Not everything needs to be realistic. Like, is it realistic to like? I don't know. I don't like. What part of realism did you think of Art the Clown committing suicide at the end of Terrifier 2 and being brought back by an evil entity to stalk this town was realistic to you in the first place? I'll pause and wait for an answer. Anyway, I thought it was funny that also over 2 hours, my God, if I wanted to suffer this badly, I'd start going back to church on Sundays. I just thought that was a bad read. Like, it was a funny read for whatever religious community you are a part of, because also, like, are you an ex-religious person, or like what's going on with this? I don't know. It was like, I feel like you never went back to church. You thought that was just um a good thing to write. I don't think you ever went to church a day in your life. But anyway, it was all right. I mean, I don't understand why we needed to, like, you gave it, like, you heard so many things about it, so you decided to give it a shot with a friend. Needless to say, they felt the same way. I mean, I can see, like, a lot of times though, it sounds like you and your friend probably are friends because you both have the same opinions on things and like the same things and don't like the same things. So it's not a shocker that you and your friend both didn't like it. I don't know why that it was added in there. Nothing added up to anything or was explained. Not everything needs to be explained at all. Halloween Ends didn't explain anything about what happened in the last 4 years. I did a quick little monologue, and people also hated that. So maybe things do need to be explained. But also, Rob Zombie's Halloween over-explained the childhood of Michael Myers, and I didn't like that. So, is there a happy medium? Oh, sorry, spiraling. Anyway, this review could have been better. It was lukewarm. It wasn't that great. I picked it because I just really liked the church Sunday thing. Moving on. Next review. Possibly the worst film I've ever seen. That's a very original title, I think. Not. Here's the review. This and the first movie are hands down the worst horror movies I have ever seen. After all the hype, I thought I'd give this a go, even though the first movie was terrible. This was simply a very unrealistic gore porn movie. Lots of bright red syrup doesn't make a good horror. There was no storyline whatsoever. Nothing was explained or added up to any conclusion, and none of it made any sense whatsoever. If you are into very long, boring movies that have no storyline to follow and you just enjoy watching very cheap and tacky gore, it's for you. Anyone who rates this movie above a 5 really shouldn't be watching horror movies and shouldn't be rating them. Seriously, don't waste 2 hours of your life live watching this crap. If you are a seasoned horror fan, it's literally terrible. Not scary or disturbing in the slightest unless you find food coloring and terrible effects frightening. I want my time back. Okay. This is a confusing review. Okay. It says in the beginning, the one thing I appreciate about this person's review is that they said this was that in the beginning, first thing I was like, here we go again. Somebody's saying that they hated the first fucking movie and watched the second one. At least this person explained why they watched it. They said, even though the first movie is terrible, because of all the hype, they thought they'd give it a go. So thank you for at least clarifying why you watched the sequel to a movie that you didn't like. Which also, little sidebar note, I kind of get though, because yesterday I watched the trailer for The Nun 2, and I wasn't a big fan of The Nun, but I probably watched The Nun 2, so I'm kind of hypocritical in that. But I don't know. I'm hoping for a better outcome. I kind of get the person's point of view on that. Anyway, I was confused where it was like, where is it? I gotta read. If you're into long, boring movies that have no storyline and enjoy watching very cheap and tacky gore, it's for you. Okay. And then the next sentence: anyone who rates this above a 5 really shouldn't be watching horror movies and shouldn't be rating them. But if that's what they're into, which you yourself said, then they should be rating them a 5 because that's what they're into. So they're going to like it. So you're very contradictory here. And then turn around and say, don't waste 2 hours of your life watching this. If you're a seasoned horror fan, it's literally terrible. Can somebody please, can we change the way that the horror community is operating, where it's like, if you're a seasoned horror fan, what does that mean? How are you seasoned? What makes you seasoned? Is it age? Is it when you started watching horror movies? Is it the number of horror content that you can consume in a 24-hour period of 7 days a week? Is it like, I live and breathe horror, so like every day of my life I'm watching something new in horror because I have to be the best horror fan so that I can have an opinion, and mine is still more, important than this guy's opinion that's been watching horror movies since he was 2, but only sees one a year. Like, how are we measuring what's a seasoned horror fan? I just need to know, because I consider myself a huge horror fan because I've always been drawn to horror, but it's not the only thing that I do. I like rom-coms. I like a lot of fucking things, but my heart is black and my soul is non-existent. But that's what makes me a horror fan is who I am, but it's not all that I am. Does that mean that I'm not a horror fan? No. Also, I have a preference for fucking slashers and classics and things like that, as opposed to body fucking gore and horror, but I still watch certain things. That doesn't mean that I'm not a horror fan. So we need to change the narrative on that. And that's the end of my read for that review. We're moving on to the next, or last, worst review for Terrifier 2 on IMDb. Oh, they tried. Here's the title. Terrified with how atrocious this was. I can appreciate the word atrocious. I haven't heard it used in a really long time, so that makes me super happy to have been able to read that word because I think we should bring back atrocious a lot more often. It's such a powerful just taste for something. It's atrocious. I'm going to use it. It's the word of the day. Make sure you use it all week too. And you typed out terrified in quotation. They thought they were doing something clever there, guys. They thought they were doing something really fucking clever. Here's the review. Honestly, so ridiculously cringy and dumb. Acting is awful. Storyline is dreadful. The gore scenes are so dramatic for no real reason. It's almost like watching a parody of a horror movie, except it goes on for too long. The plot makes absolutely no sense. The acting is horrible, and there's literally no coherent plot. It was an actual job just to finish this movie and could not wait for it to end. I despised every single character in the movie and could care less about what happened. The ending was insufferable. Terrible acting, terrible script, terribly long, just terrible in every way. Avoid it. You know what would have what would have made this review the best if they would have just ended it with if they would have like Terrifier 2, more like Terrible 2. And that would have just made it so much fucking better. But I love this review because I loved all the words they use. Atrocious. What other? Dreadful. Where's the rest? They despised it. Insufferable. I just love all the words that they used in it. And I mean, did you not like the movie? I couldn't tell. I think it was great. I loved it. I don't agree with it. I think that this is a very harsh review, but that's what we read on here. We read the really harsh ones that we look for. No coherent plot. I mean, again, it's not completely wrong. There's some fantastical aspects to this movie that you're kind of like I'm going to drop a spoiler, so I don't know, maybe mute me for 20 seconds, 10 seconds so that you don't hear it. But a part that got to me was how long Sienna was in the fucking water tank for, still trying to get out. I'm like, girl, she not dead yet? How? What the fuck? I've never. But anyway, I just thought that this was my favorite review just because of the descriptions. Great job on that. Again, I need to start getting creative with more words that I choose to use when I write my reviews, which we're getting onto now. So that concludes this week's top 3 and top 3 best and worst reviews for Terrifier 2. So what did I think about Terrifier 2? Let's move on to that because that's what we're here for, right? I'm here to talk shit about everybody else's reviews, and now I'm going to talk about what I liked most about Terrifier 2. So it wasn't actually like a part of the movie, which a lot of times what I'm what I like most about movies is actually not even like a specific scene or a part of the movie, but it's more of like a feeling. So what I liked most about Terrifier 2 was the feeling of watching a horror movie that isn't trying to be anything else. It makes no sense. It's over the top and it's made up and it's just made for the fans unapologetically. See, I used the word unapologetically. It's one of my favorite words in the dictionary. I use it all the time. But no, like I really just if you know what I mean, I think you understand what I mean, and I don't want to try to explain it too much. But like the feeling of the movie is like it's a horror movie. Like someone who's not a fan of horror, it's not an introductory film. It's not something that people would be able to watch and they would try to understand. Like it's not a drama where like some horror movies could be considered like horror drama. The category is just the genre is just horror. And there's a certain way that horror movies behave and certain things that the rules don't apply and it doesn't matter and we love it anyway. And we don't try to make sense of it. That's what this movie gave me. And that's what I want in certain horror movies. Not every horror movie, but like for Terrifier, that's what I'm looking for. Please don't ever try to make it into anything else. I think Terrifier would actually, I'm going to say this on record, would be the only like movie where like if I figured out that he's like from outer space, I wouldn't even be upset about it. Like I'd be like, okay. And like fuck it, right? Like more arts just keep dropping out of like fucking Mars. But I, I just think that we need to keep that alive in the horror community and not overly do like heightened horror, elevated horror shit. Even though I like them too, I think we need to keep the basic like way that horror movies have their certain aspects with the cinematography, the outlandish stories, the things that don't make sense. Like we need that too. What I liked the least about Terrifier 2, which a lot of people have commented in their reviews, it was how long the movie was. My opinion is I think that the movie could have been 30 minutes shorter and still just as good for me. It was just very drawn out for certain things, especially the dream sequence. The one person in the review had mentioned that it was their favorite part. I liked the dream sequence, but then I'm like, okay, it's very long, like very, very long. I thought it could have been edited a little bit, and that's just me critiquing, and not that it matters. And like, it's just my opinion. I just think it could have been a little bit shorter. I think we could have dropped it under 2 hours or right at like the 2 hour mark, and it still would have been great. It just felt that certain parts felt a little bit drawn out. That could have been dropped a little bit longer. But that's what I think. Hopefully, Terrifier 3, which was announced, I'm so fucking excited about it, does, takes that into consideration, but not too short. I don't want a short. I don't know. He started out making shorts, and now he's making extra long Titanic movies. Like, let's find that balance. Let's find the balance, Damien. Just kidding. I love you. Anyway, before we move on, I think we should take a moment to answer this week's terrifying trivia question. I'm going to repeat the question now. The question was, in the school scene, when Jonathan sees Art and the little pale girl, what animal corpse are they playing with? Was it A, a skunk, B, a rabbit, C, a possum, or D, a dog? And the answer is C, a possum. I hate possums. I hate them. I don't know. People think they're cute. They just freak me the fuck out. I have them in my yard. Sometimes I see them out there by the trash or on the fence, and I'm like, fucking no. God, no. And then, like, them playing with the court, like, everything about it. What a fucking scene, right? Like, just, that was such a creepy scene. And also, like, kudos and shout out to the little pale girl and the actors. Like, I love the little pale girl. And apparently, I was, like, doing research for this episode. I must have missed it. I don't know how I missed it, or maybe I did see it, but it didn't stick in my brain, that the little pale girl was one of his first victims, or a victim or something like that, of Art the Clown. And that's who brought him back, or something like that's like a manifestation of someone that he had murdered before. I don't remember that. But anyway, speaking of how many, murders in Terrifier, we're going to do our quick little segment, which is the number of kills in Terrifier 2. Terrifier 2 had 28 kills, including the dream sequence. Even though they weren't real kills, they were on camera, they were gruesome, and they deserve to be included. That's a lot of kills in just Terrifier 2. I didn't even look up altogether how many kills, but like, that's another hard thing. Like, how many people can we kill in one movie? Let's just kill a bunch of fucking things. We're killing possums. We're killing people. We're killing ratings. I just thought that was super cool. 28 is like some movies. They're like 2 deaths, and it's like a 4-hour movie. Not to say it's anything about it, but for Terrifier, I want a bunch of deaths, and maybe I can be an extra in one where like I'm just walking. Like, it makes no sense. I'm just walking, and I just get like, he just comes out and gets me. I don't know. I just want to happen. Just a quick, great special effects, over the top death scene in Terrifier 3. But we have come to the point in the show where we must wrap it up with the final rating and review on Terrifier 2. So if you made it this far, congratulations. Thank you for sticking around. it's time to end the show with my rating. And this week's rating system are clown horns. I don't know what the fuck they're actually called. They're like the horns that R has. They squeeze them and they're like a horn or whatever. So anyway, my rating for Terrifier 2 is a 7 out of 10. It was hard. The over 2 hour mark and the drawn out dream sequence made me not give it an 8 out of 10. That's just I think if it was edited a little bit more, I would have given it an 8 out of 10. I didn't give it a 9 or a 10 out of 10 because of other factors, obviously, that just didn't hit it for me. But a 7 out of 10 I think is really good. Because like it's really hard for me to get a 10 out of 10. There's always the critiques. But anyway, that's my rating. And here is my final review. Terrifier 2 is exactly what you should expect. The entire cast and creators gave us another crazy, brutal, and sometimes hilarious Art the Clown movie. Terrifier 2 will take you back to the underrated horror movies of the 80s and 90s, and you won't be upset about it at all. While the runtime feels too long, the storyline a bit unrealistic, and the kills over the top, Terrifier 2 somehow still manages to work its way into horror fans' little black hearts and has us all screaming for more. So, where can you watch Terrifier 2? Terrifier 2 is streaming now on Peacock. And that is the end of this week's episode of The Horror Within Me. Please rate and review this episode. Thank you so much for joining me on another spooky Sunday. Until next time, my horror fans, stay spooky. Thanks again for joining me on this week's episode of The Horror Within Me. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate and review wherever you listen to your podcast. And for even more Horror Within Me content, visit my link tree at linktr.ee/horrorwithinme for links to the website, my Patreon, and all of my social channels to stay up to date on all the spooky stuff that we're doing. So be safe, and until next time, stay spooky.